So Odie, so tell me about the first time you ever had stage fright.
The first time was probably when I was in the fifth grade. I was in a spelling bee, fifth grade spelling bee, and I was in a line on stage. We were sitting in chairs. There was about 15 of us, 10 or 15 of us,
Mm-hmm.
and I was asked to spell several words, which I got quite a few of them correct, but then I was asked to spell a particular word, which I choked on, and I was very embarrassed.
Really? What was the word?
The word was addition,
Hmm.
which is a pretty easy word.
Yeah, right.
And I spelt it, you have, I think, a minute or 30 seconds
Mhm.
or something like that to spell it correctly, and I didn't get it in time. And I spelled it incorrectly, and the buzzer went, and I was mortified.
I bet.
And after the buzzer went, and I realized I was out of the spelling bee, I took my chair and I pulled it out of the line so that people couldn't see me anymore, so that I would become invisible.
I see. Did it make noise?
It screeched when I pulled it back.
Oh no.
And I was not invisible. I mean, everybody could still see me.
So did the audience have any kind of reaction to your chair noise?
Yeah, they laughed when I pulled my chair back. They
I
laughed.
see.
And I felt like
Mm.
they were laughing at me. I felt like
I
everybody
see.
was laughing at me.
Yeah, especially in fifth grade.
Yeah,
You're like 9 or 10. It's horrible.
yeah. It was pretty horrible.
Well, yeah, it's pretty traumatic because it's all over one word.
Yeah, such a simple word.
Such a simple word, and then they seem to make a big deal about it, and the reality is I think everybody probably was ultimately a little nervous for you,
Probably.
and that's probably why they laughed. But it's hard for a kid to get over that. It's hard for a kid to realize that it's not about them doing something wrong or them being wrong or anything like that. It just was one of those moments because you probably had all the parents in the audience and they were worried about their own kids and they were nervous and tense for the kids. So, but when you're a kid, you don't know that.
Exactly.
You think, well, this is just I did something wrong. Everybody's laughing at me. But these things get impacted in your nervous system and they get stuck. So the next time you go up and you do something that's in a public place, and it could be a situation where there are big expectations, you get stage fright. That's how it happens. It gets stuck in the nervous system. There's a chemical signal that gets stuck there. So you go do something else, and later, and that memory of that horrible experience comes up again. Those things tend not to go away. So when was the next time you felt some stage fright of some kind?
The next time was a speech I had to do in high school, and again, the same thing. And, I felt all those same things, the shaking, only this time it was worse because I remembered my bad experience from the spelling bee.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
And I didn't want that to happen to me again. I didn't want to mess up. I wanted to remember my speech. I had my cue cards, but I had that awareness that I could choke again, and all these eyes were on me. Only now I'm that much older, and these aren't parents watching me. These are
your peers.
my peers,
yeah, right.
Exactly.
Who can be mean sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. All the peer pressure. And
how was the teacher towards you in that speech class?
I remember the teacher being kind. The teacher wasn't. The teacher was fine. The teacher didn't really put much pressure on me. I think it's the students that. Oh, I put that pressure on myself.
Sure.
Thinking the students are putting the pressure on me.
Yeah, but students tend to think in high school they tend to be pretty self-critical also. So it was kind of a tense environment.
Yeah, you just want to fit in.
Right, exactly. And part of that is you don't want to screw up. And then you had that experience from before that was so vivid, and that's tough. Yeah. So what ended up happening? Did anybody really notice?
I asked my my peers and my classmates, and none of them, they said, no, you were fine. You did great. I said, could you tell my hands were shaking? Could you hear my heart beating? Could you see how dry my lips were? Could you see me shaking? None of that. I mean, they said no. We couldn't see any of that. We could not tell that you were nervous at all, which is amazing to me.
Yeah, but that's pretty typical. It's pretty typical because what the person with stage fright always thinks is that the whole world's caved in and all this horrible stuff is happening to them, and it's not really happening. It's an internal war. It's an internal struggle. So were there any other times after that happened that you can recall?
Sure. I took some acting classes here in LA, and I was being critiqued. I was in a class where each student was being critiqued by the instructor, and then we were able to take our footage, our tape footage home with us so that we could review the critique at home so that we could improve on our performance. And that was really nerve-wracking because I knew that the critique was coming, you know, when I was sitting with the instructor, and knowing that critique was coming was very nerve-wracking. So you want to say all the right things, you want to do everything correctly, so the critique is, you know, done well, so that you don't have a harsh critique.
Right, because you don't want to, once again, you don't want to screw up and you don't want to embarrass yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So much of it's about embarrassment, you know?
Yeah.
And so how did that all work out? You know, did you have some moments in these acting critiques where things didn't go well, or you thought they didn't go well? Or?
Well, I mean, I definitely, you know, had a lot of areas that I needed improvement, you know, and the instructor pointed that out, which of course was his job. I mean, that's why I was taking classes.
Of course.
But you don't think in those terms when you're there, you know, you just want to do it, you just want to ace it.
Right, of course.
So, yeah, but you know, then when I showed people at home, my family members, you know, the tape, and they said to me, "You're fine, you look great, you know, you don't look nervous, you're not shaking," and they couldn't tell looking at the tape.
Yeah, it's really common for people, especially at a little bit of a minor level of stage fright, that they have internal struggles and they get very upset internally, but on the outside it all looks pretty darn good. And so people mistake the situation as being something worse than it really is. You know, they perceive that, oh my God, the whole thing's terrible, and on the outside it looked bad. But that's also a result of what happened from 5th grade and what happened in the other thing with public speaking before that. And it tends to pile up, and it really does wreak havoc with your self-concept. These moments in public, they're very serious for a lot of people, and it's very common. So you're not alone. So after that, besides acting and public speaking class and spelling bees, were there any other moments that came up where you had some stage fright problems, or you got really a bad case of nerves?
You know, I do remember one other situation.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
I do.
Okay.
I remember when I was moving to LA and I was leaving my position where I was working before I left. They threw me a party.
Oh.
That's
nice.
Yeah, at the place where I was working, and then they were asking me to give a speech.
Ah.
And that was difficult because I was emotional to begin with, because I was leaving all these great people, you know, in this great position, and I was going to be moving across the country and leaving my home, and so I had that going on, and then, you know, the pressure of giving the speech. You know, what do I say?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I had no idea what to say. So.
Well, most people associate giving a speech with death. It's really common. I get a lot of people that are afraid in public speaking situations. Very true. So how did that all work out? What happened?
I mean, I gave a very impromptu speech. And you know, it worked out.
And people probably liked it, but you were a little bit of a nervous wreck, huh?
I was, yeah.
Well, that's very typical, but it's not hopeless. You know, you can solve stage fright. You don't have to struggle with it, and you don't have to suffer with it. And there's some techniques that you can use to drain all these negative feelings and all these negative emotions that are associated with speaking in public or doing any kind of performance, or just doing something at your job. Anything under a deadline.